we are up against armies today that have got many guys feeling so intimidated that they feel like, man, I'm not in charge. I'm just one guy. I can't do anything. One man on a mission with the right motive behind him for the service of other people catches the attention of heaven, I believe. And now you've got a force behind you that nobody can stop. And you'll inspire others who will join the mission. And all of a sudden, you've got a band of brothers, you've got a pack of wolves, and you got people in God's army of compassion that can change the world.
Well, Kirk, it's good to see you.
Thank you, man. Great to see you.
First things first, I got you a gift.
What did you bring me?
Are you familiar with Montana Knife Company?
No.
Check it out. So,
are you serious?
Yeah. So these guys
Do I need to get rid of the knife that's in my pocket right now?
Yeah, you can't be I need you to replace it with this. No. So Montana Knife Company is a friend of mine, Josh Smith. He's a master bladesmith, and they're in Frenchtown, Montana. But they're making 100% made in America knives.
I love this.
Yeah, figured you'd like it.
Dude.
They're amazing. They do a great job.
Look at that.
Yeah, careful. And they're sharp. Be careful when you open them up. And they put the Order Man logo, I think, on that side too.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So that's their Magna Cut steel, but you're gonna love that knife.
That's a beauty.
It may not work for. They have smaller versions for like everyday carry stuff because you probably carry a folding knife, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so do I typically. But they have smaller knives. They don't have their folding stuff yet.
With this, what is this, Kydex?
Yeah, the Kydex holder or holster, sleeve or whatever it's called.
Yeah, man, I like this. This is nice.
Yeah, they do some cool stuff. They've got this stuff. They've got a tactical lineup. So this is like their hunting lineup, but a tactical lineup. And then they have their culinary knives too.
And they're so useful. I use mine all the time.
I
Whether
know.
I'm just opening up letters or I'm cutting open food bags or I'm trying to get through a rope or something like that. They're just so useful.
You got to have a knife.
Got to.
I was at a game, one of my sons, I don't know, football or lacrosse game last year. And I heard my name from a parent up above me. And he's like, "Hey, Ryan." I'm turning around. He's like, "Do you have a knife?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah."
I have a knife.
So I grabbed a knife and gave it to him. He's like, "I asked you because I knew you would have a knife on you."
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the best compliment I could get.
You know, and it's just a great feeling when someone, they call for a knife and you're the
And
guy
you
who's
have
got
it.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a good feeling. And everybody likes to be that guy.
Yeah,
Who's like,
to be
bro.
useful, right? It is interesting because I'm pretty familiar with your work, and you've been on the podcast in the past couple years ago, I think. But you talk a lot about this I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this misguided idea.
Well, you put a
of
knife in my
masculinity.
hand. Go ahead and put a word in my mouth.
I can do that, yeah. But this misguided idea of like new cultural masculinity or something like that, you know, and it's weird how much we've tried to like change what it actually means to be a man.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I so appreciate the work that you are doing to retool what masculinity and being a man is all about. Because as a father of 3 sons who are now adults, they are finding it challenging to find role models of appropriate strength and masculinity in today's culture, because you've got perversions of masculinity all around us. There are some men who act like children.
Yes.
They haven't made the transition from boy to man. And many of us have never really been taught what is it that makes you a man and no longer a boy. And a lot of guys wouldn't even know how to answer that question. When did you become a man? When you were 15? When you had your first beer or cigarette? When you slept with a girl? Or when you became financially independent? Or you went to war and had a gun?
Right.
And then there's also men today who think that they're women.
Yeah. Literally.
Right. And then there's men who act like animals. And it shouldn't be any wonder when kids grow up being taught that we are literally biologically animals who have evolved to a state that's just higher than the lions and the wolves and the beasts of the field. Not that we're separate and different with a moral code and an appeal to justice and chivalry and love and compassion. And that is not part of the animal world. We are different.
Yeah.
We're men. What does it mean to be a man? And so I appreciate what you're doing, helping people to understand that. And I, too, want to contribute something to that effort.
Do you think that there is, to go back to when do you become a man, there is one pivotal moment, or is it a series of moments, or is it a age? What is it for you? How would you define that?
Well, it's interesting that I'm trying to remember the book that I read, and it's all about a boy's passage, man's journey. That's what it was called.
Okay.
Boy's passage, man's journey. And it was written by a father who studied this idea of a rite of passage for young men. Mm-hmm. And many cultures have a rite of passage, including Africans who will take the boys and they have a period of time at around a certain age where they go through these tests and these feats of strength and mental agility and faithfulness and go out into the woods or the top of a mountain and bring back an ostrich feather dipped in the blood of a goat that they had to kill. And
I thought he was going to say dipped in the blood of his enemy or something like that.
Something,
but the goat will work.
Something like that. And he comes back and like all the men celebrate him in a big group, and then he gets castrated with a rock.
Yeah, he's marked in some way.
And then his father puts him on his shoulders and says essentially what God the Father said to Jesus Christ at his baptism: "This is the Son whom I love, and in him I am well pleased." And he's given a robe and a staff and a hut and a goat and a wife, and he is a man.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and it's marked in his mind. And the Jewish people will have that with a bar mitzvah.
Bar mitzvah, right, yeah.
That's right. And the Romans would have that in their, but in our culture, we have 45-year-old men who are still living at their mom's house in the basement playing Call of Duty, trying to live out, I believe, vicariously through digital make-believe warriors, the life that God has designed for men to live, which is a life of provision and protection and building and working and loving and sacrificing for others and raising the next generation. If we can't embrace that as a culture, and we're gonna punt and say, dude, you can have a baby as a man, or kids, and we raise them like that since they're little, they'll have no idea what it means to be a man. That's why we can have Supreme Court justices and everybody else who can't even tell you what a woman is. They can't tell you what a man is because they paint themselves in a corner rhetorically, and all of a sudden they're going to torpedo the political money that's coming in to support them.
Right. Well, what's funny about that is they can define it. They just refuse to. Right. And that's what I think you're saying with the painting into a corner is they've upheld and bought into these woke leftist ideologies, and they can't rebuke them because they're so vested in that storyline, even though they know it's not accurate.
I believe so. I believe so, because I don't think they're stupid.
They're not dumb. They're
not dumb.
Highly intelligent. They're capable of discernment.
Yeah, exactly. They're many of them are far smarter than I am, but even I, a nitwit, can see what's going on, right? And so. And we see this in lots of different things, and racial politics and identity politics, sexual politics, gender politics. They all serve a different purpose, and that's why I appreciate what you're doing. Is you're getting back to the basics, getting back to authenticity and genuineness. And listen, what are we here for? Why? What makes men different than women? What makes men different than children? And what makes men different than animals? Because we are. Or if we're not, well, then let's just let's just go do something else, but not this podcast.
I think I knew where you were going. You went a little different direction, but I think there's a lot of people who would say there is no differentiation or distinction. I mean, clearly physically, but even that they deny or change and chop off body parts.
You can put something on and take something off. Hey, with this knife, I could turn you into a girl
you
right
definitely
now, bro.
Could. You definitely could. I'll pass. You know what? Give me that back.
Give me the knife back.
No, it is interesting, though, because I was on Twitter just before you came over, which is not always advisable. And I was talking with a guy who was telling me that, and he was trying to say it in very technical, smart, fancy terms about how everything is conflated and masculinity doesn't matter and all this kind of stuff is outdated. And I'm here thinking, you know what? If that's the reality, if the reality that all of this stuff is outdated and unimportant, then why are men falling behind on just about every metric that you can imagine? From suicide to alcohol and drug abuse to fewer and fewer getting married, lower college admission rates, lower income earnings than they have in the past, not being in a relationship, fewer marriages, fewer children. Like, we are falling behind on every metric. So if the lack of masculinity is producing that result, then I think we probably ought to consider that maybe there is some objective version of masculinity and manliness.
I think absolutely there is. And I'm a fan, as an older man, of history. When I was a kid, I couldn't care less about history. These are a bunch of dead guys. What are they going to teach me? Right? Like, we're here now. They didn't even know what a television was way back then. George Washington and Robert the Bruce and William Wallace and Wilberforce and all of these guys. But I look back now and I think, man, these guys were studs. They were heroes. They did amazing things. They weren't perfect, but they had some things that were, they drove some stakes into the ground. And many of them who did great things in history that set people free, that were the fathers of science or industry
and
or
nations
that brought about great awakenings toward morality or spirituality or principles of economics, or they were people who had a belief that they weren't just a random collection of cells that never had them in mind, that evolved through a process that couldn't care less what happens to them. They believed they were actually created on purpose for a purpose, and that family had intrinsic value, not just, hey, we like this family thing, but it doesn't really matter, and that, doesn't matter whether you're male or female, and right can be wrong and wrong can be right in different cultures. No, they had this idea that good is going to prevail over evil, that men have responsibilities that are sacred, and that so do women, and that we each need to play our roles well. And within those roles, there's great diversity and there is great freedom and autonomy to be uniquely yourself. But at the end of the day, you're not here for you.
Right.
You're here for your creator, and you're here for others on a mission to accomplish that which is true and beautiful and good. And if you choose to reject the mission, it's not going to turn out good for you. But if you choose to accept the mission and you get on board with that, man, it's going to be an adventure, and it's going to result in blessing and reward.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting when you talk about this idea of you're not here for yourself, because that's one common theme I see in a lot of the very successful men I've had on the podcast, is they know there's something bigger. Many are spiritual and some are not, but they all of them know that there's something bigger than themselves. But if you look at society today, it is all based around, I'm going to get mine. Here's one. I just want to be happy. I just want to do things that make me happy. It's like, well, I want to be happy too, but I find happiness and fulfillment towards something more important than just how I might be feeling mentally for the day.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, we could chase that rabbit down its hole. I just want to be happy. Well, I mean, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? He just wanted to be happy. What about Hitler? He just wanted to be happy. What about Epstein? He just wanted to be happy. But we would all come back and go, well, hold time out.
Maybe that's not the...
That's sick.
Yeah, right.
You can't do that. It's not about what makes you happy. For me, I say, what is it that's going to make... Personally, I want to honor God because I'm grateful for my life and my wife and my kids, that I get to breathe right now, and he kept my heart beating while I was asleep last night. And I want to be a blessing to other people in their life. If everybody just lived that way, right? Like the two great commandments: love God with all your heart, all your strength, and love your neighbor the way that you'd like to be loved yourself. If we all did that, bro,
It'd be pretty.
I mean, it would be like heaven on earth.
It'd be pretty amazing, wouldn't it?
We wouldn't need any laws. We wouldn't need any courts. We wouldn't need any police. We wouldn't need any of that stuff because people are governing themselves under the rules that we were intended to live by, which is kindness and compassion. Now, unfortunately, there's evil. And so we need weapons, and we need civil government and police, and we need all of those things. But if we can focus on propagating the good and amplifying the right stuff in the hearts of young men and women, then the size and the scope of all of the other things like civil government and war and police and prisons and all that stuff will shrink and shrink and shrink to where it ought to be, which is small.
Right. Yeah, something that isn't an absolute necessity. It's just there to, for some basic things. But I also like one thing you said too about this idea that we have an objectionable, or not objectionable is not the right word, an objective purpose, that it's not subject to interpretation. This is why we're here as men. But I also like what you said about the idea of diversity. You know, for example, we often talk about a man's job is to provide. Yeah. And part of provision is financial provision. Yeah. And I don't care if you play football for the Eagles or you paint or you create music. It doesn't, not one or the other makes you less or more manly. It's the fact that you can provide for yourself and for other people. Yeah,
I love that too. And of course, as you said, that will take on different ways. I mean, I provide for my family in such a weird way. I didn't study to be a politician. I didn't study to be a minister. I didn't study really to be an actor. I didn't even want to be an actor. I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little kid. Yeah. Wow. But I grew up with opportunities and doors that opened up that sent me down a path I never planned to go down. But I look now in the rearview mirror and I'm going like, holy cow, this is way better than what I thought I wanted for my life. And now I'm providing for my family spiritually, I hope, I think, I'm trying, financially, emotionally. And you know, I think more than providing for your wife and kids financially and physically, which is sort of like what we intuitively understand as
kind
men,
of that surface level, like,
right?
Obviously,
like I'm here to protect you. I think I know what that means. That means something. I'm your shield. I'm your sword. I'm your protector. And financially, I want to provide for you so that we can buy food and turn on the lights. But there's an aspect I think sometimes as men we miss. I know I've missed it in my marriage, and that is that my wife, she's the heart of our home. She's the soft and the tender and the relationally driven. I'm the outside. I'm the ribs. I'm the shield. She's the heart inside. And she needs me to protect her. But you know where she wants protection most? Emotional security.
Right.
She wants to know that I'm not looking at her, wishing she was someone different than who she is, criticizing her, condemning her, and evaluating everything she does. She wants to know that my eyes are on her and my love for her is secure just the way she is, and we're going to grow together into the people that God wants us to be. And if I can provide my wife with the kind of emotional security that lets her know she's valued and that she will never be alone, I am with you and I treasure you, then that puts her into a position to open up like a flower to you as a man and say, you're my knight in shining armor. I will go wherever you want to go and do whatever you want to do because you're with me and I trust you. That's the kind of security I'm working on with my wife because she deserves it. And I kind of missed it for a lot of years.
Well, it's also, and I know you're talking about it in the context of what's good for her, but for guys who are listening, it's also good for you.
Yeah,
because you get the nurturing, the guidance, the love, the support, the kindness, the empathy that you want in a relationship.
We need.
But it is funny because, and I haven't always been great at this, just like we all struggle in certain times, but I see this with my kids too, you know, and at the baseline, you could say, okay, I'm going to watch. I have 3 boys as well, and I have a daughter too. But I can watch any of them play sports, and the safety that they need from me is that I'm not going to think less of them if they lose the game. And I probably won't even think all that much more of them if they win the game. Like, I love you. I'm here for you. I'm here to support. I want you to win. I want you to play hard. But at the end of the day, that does not define your worth to me.
Yeah.
So it's creating this really stable, creating this really stable emotional response that I have to my kids.
Man, high five. If you're doing that, that is exemplary.
Well, I'm trying. I'm trying.
I know you're not. I know you're not perfect, but just the fact that you're aware of that, you recognize that, and you are striving to do that, that's exemplary, and that's the best that any of us can do. You know, for people who read the Bible, they'll recognize that the greatest blessing, the Bible says, is that God does not treat his children according to what they deserve, and that there's nothing you can do or not do that's going to make God love you more or less. He's decided to set his love upon his sons and daughters. And so that's not licensed to go out there and start acting like an idiot and do evil.
Right.
But what that does give you is, it gives me security as a son that whether I win the game or I lose the game today, that's not going to change the commitment of my father.
Right.
And that's the kind of man. Those are the orders to men in parenting our children and toward our wives and everybody else in our life, is value people and don't withhold your commitment to loving people, especially your family, based on their performance. You wouldn't want God to treat you that way.
That's fair.
So don't treat other people that way.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think the idea too behind that is that now if you have something that's more significant, whether it's God or a set of virtues, I don't know what it is for people. It serves as a foundation for you to behave in a certain way that is not contingent upon validation from other people or what I call the doctrine of popular culture, because on one day it could mean this and the next day it could mean that. Just like we were talking about, man means woman, woman means man. You can interchange. Like, no, you can't, because
blowing with the wind.
I'm set on this foundation and it's immovable for me.
But doesn't that make you a relic and stiff and rigid and unenlightened?
I think it does to people who don't have that foundation. I would imagine they interpret it that way. But the reality, this is one question I get a lot, especially with God, because I wrote a book called Sovereignty, and sovereignty is important to me. It's just being able to do the things that you want to do, make decisions on your own accord, live the life that you want to live, not at the expense of others or selfishly by any means, but so that you can better serve. And a lot of guys will say, well, you know, if I follow the word of God, for example, am I relinquishing my sovereignty? And it's an interesting question. I don't think you are, because you're voluntarily deciding to follow his word, which means you made the decision to do that. But it would be like playing on a sports team and thinking that you're relinquishing your ability to play football because you happen to have to memorize the playbook for that team. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me.
Yeah. Well, it is. I want to read your book, Sovereignty. And it is such a comprehensive word when you talk about sovereignty, because if we want to talk about the sovereign, the ultimate sovereign, I know it's not me.
Right.
Because, you know, I missed this appointment today, and so I don't even have control over my own schedule.
Right.
Or my brain glitches
And
half
me,
of the time.
I'm thinking, if I'm in control, there's a lot of things about my life I would snap my fingers and change today.
So if I want to be sovereign over my own life, I wouldn't be losing the hair on the top of my head.
Right.
But I recognize that the sovereign has given me freedom and opportunity to do things like come here and talk with you about an important subject, encourage men to be all that God created them to be, and to bless other people. And I love it. I love what you're about, and I appreciate being able to contribute to the conversation. In fact, I wrote a book recently called Born to be Brave, and it's really a call to masculine courage in the context of a culture that is turning many men It's putting them in the corner on the couch, watching the news, getting discouraged, feeling like there's nothing they can do, and they're hanging it up and kind of waiting for the end. Which, if I were the enemy of the United States of America, looking to weaken the forces that will defend what is good and right, I would go after the men. And not only would I not go after the men, I would empower the women to think they are men. I'd trick the men and make them think that they're women. And then I would get the kids in my school so that in 20 years, those kids are thinking exactly the way that I want them to think.
Right.
Which is that God is dead, America sucks, and your parents are dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where we are today. And so
that's exactly where we are.
I wrote this book to try to share some of the things that give me courage and that set my sights and calibrate my compass morally and spiritually by looking at lessons from legends and history's heroes and say, how did they do it? Mm-hmm. How did they come out of their stuff when you were talking about the Roman Empire on top of you?
Right.
You're coming out of like slavery in England and Africa. Well, how did you do that? Paganism and the Druids in Ireland. Like, how did these guys do this? And these are the kinds of characteristics that I think are timeless. And they're things that we just need to get back in touch with and reactivate and draw down on those things in our culture.
Yeah. As I was going through your book, I was reminded of something a friend of mine said. His name's Jack Donovan, but he said, and I'm paraphrasing, in today's day and age, you have to choose to be a man. But before, 500 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years ago, you didn't have that choice. You acted that way or you died. Like, that was the option.
Wow.
But now we can act however we want. We can be unrighteous, we can steal, we can lie, we can deceive, we can contort truth, and there's no real consequence to it.
Yeah, and one of the quotes that I mentioned at the beginning of one of these chapters called Arise Warrior is from Jordan Peterson. Don't you love Jordan Peterson, listening to the things he says?
Sometimes I don't like over my head, but
yeah, me too.
The part that I catch, I'm like, yeah, it's good.
So that's why I like to record it and rewind it, listen to it again, and transcribe it and read it and highlight it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things he said was, in speaking of the definition of a good man, he was saying this in the context of a culture that's saying, it's better if men weren't so toxically masculine, that they weren't so aggressive, they weren't so competitive, they weren't so bold, they weren't so like,
right.
man. And he said, a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Mm-hmm. Think about what he's saying right there. When you look at The Gladiator or you look at Braveheart, I mean, pick the hero of the movie you just love the most. What makes him so virtuous is not that he's harmless. He said a harmless man's like a rabbit. He can't do anything except get eaten.
Right.
A virtuous man, a good man, is a man who is principled, who loves his family. He's not blown left and right by the wind. He knows who he is and whose he is and why he's here. And he's actually a very lethal and dangerous man to the forces of evil and darkness. And he has that power under voluntary control and only uses it when appropriate, against whom it is appropriate. And he actually bases that off of a section in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 5, where it says that blessed are the meek. And many people hear that, and what they're hearing in their head is blessed are the weak.
Right.
And he's saying it's quite the opposite. The picture there of meekness is actually that of a Clydesdale-like warhorse that is just rippling with strength and power to create incredible destruction, yet it stands absolutely still and is under the complete control of its rider, waiting for the slightest indication of his directive to move.
Right.
And he's saying, blessed are those who are under divine control and able to inflict damage to that which is coming after what is true and beautiful and good, like your family, like your faith, like your freedom, like your opportunity to educate your children and bless other people. I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of guy I want to be.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that's what women want too. I don't think they want a mouse.
No.
I mean, if you want to biatch slap a guy around and just have him be your little houseboy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that. You could go hire one of those guys. There's plenty out in California you could go find.
I just flew in from San Francisco. I mean, it might be there.
But if you're a woman who is really looking for the life that I believe women are designed to like fulfill and to enjoy and to live out, if you can do that in partnership with a man who is all of what a real man is meant to be, my goodness, you have an adventure and a beautiful story that is sitting in front of you.
Right.
And I think that's what every true romantic wants, is to live that kind of a life where man meets woman, they come together, become one flesh, and they go change the world together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's powerful. It is powerful.
It is. We get to live it out if we
decide.
choose to accept the mission.
If you decide.
That's right.
It is interesting, though, because you have guys who, and I talk with them every day, who are like, oh, well, you don't need to know how to do this or need to know how to do that. I'm like, you know what? You might never need to. You might never need a knife outside of something around the house. You might never need to shoot your gun. And I hope you don't. But wouldn't you feel better if you could and you were capable of and you knew how? And you never had to use it? Isn't that better than feeling helpless, pathetic, potentially cowardly?
But we've got to pick our battles, right? I would feel better if I knew Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
I would feel better if I had a lot of things, like, a bomb shelter, and I had, 4 years of food stored up in my bunker, right? But I can't
do everything.
I can't manage everything.
Sure.
What do you think are the things, like maybe just a couple, maybe not the most important, but what are a couple of the things that men ought to make priorities in their life that maybe they don't have to, but you should for the sake of the people in your care?
Are you asking me? You're not asking rhetorically.
I'm asking you.
So our motto is protect, provide, preside. So protection, if I had to whittle it to one thing, I would say situational awareness. If you can be more situationally aware, you'll be less likely to use a knife or be attacked or whatever it might be.
Because you're protecting by avoiding danger in the first place.
Right. So if there's one thing you had to do, just be situationally aware.
Okay.
Provide, I would say, get good at your craft. Whatever your craft is.
Be a badass at whatever it is
whatever
that you
it
do.
is. If you're an actor, if you're a podcaster, if you're a builder, just get proficient at doing that and doing it really well.
Yeah.
And then I think, so the third component is preside, which is synonymous with leadership, communication. Learn to be a better communicator. Ask questions, be curious, active listening, know how to cast vision, communicate ideas in respectful ways. I think if you did those three things, you're going to nail probably 80, 85, 90% of everything else.
Man, I bet if I asked my wife what she thinks of those three things, I think she would agree and affirm everything you just said. Because when she's being protected, she makes her feel safe. It's what she wants more than anything else. She wants to feel safe. It doesn't mean that she's a sissy. It doesn't mean she's weak. It doesn't mean it means that she was designed in such a way to where she can't be the sensitive, the soft, the relational, the all that I love if she also has to protect herself.
Right.
Especially if she has to protect herself from me.
Yeah, that's true too.
Because I'm an anger guy, or because I'm a porn guy, or because I'm an irresponsible financial guy. Now she's got to protect herself financially, mentally, emotionally, sexually, and she can't be the full flower of who she was meant to be. So I got to protect her.
Yeah.
And I think she'd agree with that.
I even think about that in the context of, one of the greatest things a woman does is create life, right?
Yeah.
Even just what a woman goes through hormonally when she's creating life, and what changes or what stressful environments can do to even just the development of that child. But I see that too, not only with growing children in your womb, but also turning a house into a home, or infusing life and love into a relationship, or bringing an idea in the community to life, or serving other ladies in the area. She can't do that fully if she's not, I was going to say sheltered. That's not the right word because it has a negative connotation. But if she's not safe and protected to be able to do what she does best.
That's been my experience. That's what I'm hearing from my wife, and that's what I hear from others. Can I tell you a story of one of my favorite heroes from history?
Yeah.
So this goes all the way back to the 9th century. This is the 800s AD. The Vikings were just torching, butchering, and pillaging their way through the kingdoms of Britain until they came to the kingdom of Wessex, and they faced off with a guy named Alfred. This is King Alfred of Wessex. And for 7 years, he protected his people from the Vikings when everybody else was dying, until he was finally driven from his home on the 12th night of Christmas. And everybody thought that he was dead. He snuck off to a tiny little island in a swamp where he learned how to hunt as a little boy with his father. And he planned one last battle, and he sent out a message to all the faithful men left in Britain who were willing to fight. And they met him in the forest, and he taught them how to lock themselves into this shield wall. And he said, men, be faithful to God, and he will be faithful to you. And they charged out on the day of Pentecost to meet with the Vikings, and got into this bloodbath battle against the Vikings and their berserkers, and it was just horrible. But against all odds, when all hope was lost, Alfred won the battle. And the leader of the Vikings was trapped. He was forced to surrender or starve to death because he had been surrounded. And what Alfred did was totally unexpected. The custom would have been to behead him and all of his leaders. Instead, he spared his life. He gave him a portion of his kingdom if he would promise to become a man of God, if he would agree to a treaty that required him to treat all of his citizens, regardless of their ethnic backgrounds or their social backgrounds, economic backgrounds, equally under the law. And then he rewrote the law, basing it on Moses' 10 Commandments and Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And rebuilt the Navy to combat the Viking longboats, and totally revolutionized the churches, the schools, and the family in Britain. And all of it came back to this idea that God has a purpose for men, and men are to be providers and protectors, and prophets speaking the truth, and priests crying out to God for the blessing and protection of their family. And that if he could do that, that he could start a movement that would catch the hearts of young men and women and ignite their minds, and they could preserve liberty and freedom for generations. And they did. And King Alfred has always been one of my heroes. And there's others like him, like St. Patrick and Braveheart and others who have done similar things. And who will the heroes be in our day that our grandkids look back and go, dude, you remember that Mickler guy? Remember that whoever guy? Remember what he did? Like, wow, like how did he get the balls to do that? Seriously, where did he get the vision that he thought it was even possible to dream so big to do that when he was up against the biggest superpower in the world, the English Empire or the Roman Empire, or the Vikings? Well, we're up against armies today that have got many guys feeling so intimidated that they feel like, man, I'm not in charge. I'm just one guy. I can't do anything. Well, but one man on a mission with the right motive behind him for the service of other people catches the attention of heaven, I believe. And now you've got a force behind you that nobody can stop. And you'll inspire others who will join the mission. And all of a sudden, you've got a band of brothers, you've got a pack of wolves, and you got people in God's army of compassion that can change the world.
Yeah. And it's also amazing, too, when you think about things like this, is because as you do that, you're going to help people that you'll never even meet or know of.
That's right.
For generations.
Right. Braveheart didn't know that you and I'd be talking about him today.
How could he?
King Alfred had no idea who we are.
That's not why he did it either.
No.
Yeah.
No. He was just faithful in his day. You know what I like to think about? I like to think about history as being his story, that there's an author who's writing all of history, his story, and that you and I, and this conversation in this house was written on one of the pages, and we get to have this conversation, and maybe something that we say that we've learned from somebody else is gonna encourage somebody listening to us today who might say something to their son who ends up doing something that changes the trajectory of families and nations in the future.
Isn't that wild to think about?
That's awesome. So what does that mean? Play your part well. Play the part of the man today. Don't wait for someone else to do it. They may be waiting to see what it looks like coming from you so that they'll know how to do it when their opportunity comes up.
Right.
Be the man. Be faithful. Be courageous to your wife, to your children first, and then to everybody else.
Did you say, what was the term you said? Faithful in his day? Is that what you said?
He was faithful in his day.
That.
He played his
I like
role
that phrase.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That actually resonates with me. Because that is really all you can control is what you're doing right now. To go back to sovereignty, we think, oh, well, I'm gonna change this, or I'm gonna get this person to like me, or I'm gonna get this person to do that, or that's okay. You can't do that. All you can do is control you. Are you faithful that if you do the right things, good things will come of it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. And there's so many things though that I can't control that I wonder, if I've got control over anything, I can't control my heartbeat at night. I don't have to remember to breathe while I'm asleep.
Right.
Like, these things are happening for me. I feel like there is someone who is sovereignly ensuring that I stay alive so that we could have this conversation, and then I could go home and I could tell my wife how beautiful she is.
Right.
And my children how important they are. Right. And so I think it's all a gift. The opportunity that we have to decide what to do with our time is a gift. And that measure of sovereignty should fill us with gratitude and just get me on my knees and just go, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is all a gift. The good, the bad, the ugly. I'm learning things, and I'm better for it.
Yeah, and so are other people. To go back to what we were talking about when we were talking about rites of passage.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything like that for your boys? Because I know you've got a children's show, and I know making sure, and even in this conversation we've talked about ensuring that we're educating our children and getting them involved and teaching them and that legacy that comes from that. Are there things that you're doing for your three boys to deliberately, outside of just your daily conversations and activity, foster them becoming men?
I want to do more, but I am doing some things. And for example, I started going hunting with my boys, and this wasn't an everyday thing for us. But as we got a little bit older, we met some people who like to hunt ducks. They've got really long beards. They live in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And so we've been going down there around Christmas time.
I may or may not have had one of them on my podcast not too long ago.
Okay. Yeah. Keep Phil in your prayers. He's
battling.
He's struggling right now.
Yeah, I know.
And so we've had a lot of great talks there, and one of the great things I love about that is it's not whether or not I can bring some deer meat home, although that's a bonus. It's the time spent in a stand, in a blind, talking at night, and getting my young sons around other men, other good men.
Yes.
So that they see that this isn't just dad putting on some show and espousing some value set that doesn't really line up with the rest of the guys and the rest of the world, but that there's guys that are like, no, what your dad's saying is right. It's true. And I feel that way too. And I see in you what your dad sees in you, or what your dad doesn't see in you. I do see in you because, and calling out those qualities and calling out that manhood in my boys, that's been very valuable to them and to me. I'm also in process right now of trying to give opportunity to the talents that I see in my boys. So like you said, you talked about being proficient at whatever it is that you do with your in the provision.
Sure.
Be excellent. Well, I have 3 sons who are really excellent at some of the things that they're endeavoring to do. One wants to start an adoption agency. One is involved in production, and so we're starting a brand new podcast that is going to basically put him in charge of all the production of that stuff.
That's cool.
And then another son who actually loves what we're talking about right now and wants to start a YouTube show that is all about masculinity and what that looks like today for 20-year-olds.
Oh, that's cool.
Because most of these guys are they're struggling.
Know. They don't know.
They want to know. And for them, it's in the context of like personal integrity, work and finances, and relationships with girls. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Because it can be so painful when you do it wrong.
It can be painful when you do it right.
That's right. There's no painless option.
Oh my gosh. No, I wish there was, but there is not, unfortunately. Oh man. So your boys are all out of the house now?
They're all out of the house. Yes, so my kids are now 28, 27, 26, 25, 23, 22. And they lived everywhere else. We grew up, they grew up in California with us. They all moved away.
Yeah.
A couple of them moved to Tennessee, so now my wife and I moved to Tennessee, and then the rest of them
they all migrated
there like ducks.
That's cool.
And now we're all together having Sunday night dinners again, and we can work together. So
that's really cool.
Those are the things that I'm finding are just gold to me now. I've got a granddaughter, and to be able to have them over and watch your kids parent their kids, you see what things stuck and what things didn't stick.
Yeah.
The good things that stuck and the bad things that stuck
sure.
with your kids.
You're like, ooh, I used to do that. It doesn't work.
and there's nothing that is more important to me and my wife now than being able to be with our kids and to be able to work with them and help make their dreams come true.
That must have been a weird feeling as you not lost, but your youngest moved out and you guys were by yourself.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, I'm not there. My youngest is 8 years old, so I still have about 10 years. It should not be any longer. I always say that. It should not be 11 years. He should be out when he's 18.
When he's 18.
Unless there's some circumstances, we can accommodate for that if we need to, but.
Sure. And it's a beautiful chapter. And I think being a grandfather is also.
Is this your first? So your granddaughter?
That's your first.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, our baby girl had a baby girl, and others I believe are coming soon. I see the twinkle
exciting
in my son's eyes. They want to have kids, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm leaning more into the stuff that we're talking about now. As young men, we want to build our careers. We want to find somebody. We want to start a family. We're looking at that, and now I'm thinking to myself, I've got young men who are looking to start a family and build their life and find a girl and start a family, right? And so I want to lean into them, and I think that's why you're doing this podcast, maybe why I wrote a book, Born to be Brave, or this new children's television show is I don't get to be here forever. So with the time that I have, I want to pour into others and help them along in their journey.
Yeah.
And if I can do that for you, man, that's a gift for me.
Yeah, it serves everybody.
Yeah.
That's such a weird concept is you think you're being selfless. And in a lot of ways, you are through your actions, but also it discounts that there's some great benefit to you as well.
It's funny that you said that. And I don't know if you're thinking about Joe Rogan right now.
I wasn't.
My son said that to me this morning. He said, you know what? I just saw the deal on Joe Rogan where he says, giving a gift to somebody isn't really selfless. I mean, you can do something kind for somebody and they appreciate it. But the fact that you are thanked by them, there's this great dopamine hit that's just like, dude, I nailed it. Score. I just made that person so happy and that feels good for me. And it's true. I mean, Jesus said it's better to give than it is to receive. And there's many aspects to that, but one of them is the fact that man, people appreciate kind people, others-focused men.
Yeah. I mean, it's also just a survival strategy, I think, for us to be a likable, capable person. Because if you're not, I don't really want you in my circle. I want to be around likable people who are capable. Yeah. I think we all ought to be looking for that in relationships.
Yeah. I was going to make a political joke, but I won't.
You should. Absolutely.
How did Joe Biden get elected?
Yeah. Good point. Well, I think it comes back to that doctrine. That's another. Yeah, that's another. No, I just think it comes back to that. Well, but I also think there's a lot of people who are. Well, I think there are people who are dumb for sure. But I also think there are a lot of, as the saying goes, useful idiots.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, I don't know what degree, but I think most people are good-natured. I just think they're not real intelligent. So their better nature at times outweighs sound reasoning and logic and common sense. Like I think about people I have close personal relationships with that I would say are more liberal in their political perspective. I don't think they're bad people. I think in a lot of ways they're good people. They're just a little misguided.
When I think about the people that are making decisions for our country and our children in public schools, and I think of the border, and I think of economic decisions that are being made on like a big national level or a corporate level, and you scratch your head and you go, what kind of sense does that make? I mean, seriously, you're gonna let 10 million people, 15 million people, 20 million people come into your country and use your healthcare system for free and your educational system, and they're gonna come in and you're gonna have taxpayers pay for hotel rooms and all this kind of stuff, and you're gonna couch all of this and we're just being kind. Well, and you want to just sort of like be willfully ignorant about all the fentanyl and all of the drug lords and all of the terrorist groups and all. Like
that stuff to me is malicious.
Right. So
for sure.
So I think it was Trump who said something like, well, they're either stupid or they're evil. And he said, I know they're not stupid. They're actually really intelligent.
Yeah.
But they're evil. And that's a harsh word. But to me, I believe that I actually don't think people are good-natured by. I don't think that they're inherently good-natured.
I think we have to work against that. I would agree with that.
There is a downward pull.
Yes.
Of the worst version of me that is a constant battle, and that I need something outside of me to lift me up and elevate me. I
would agree with that.
I think of it like an airplane. How in the world does an airplane fly? This knife, this beautiful knife made by Montana Knife Company, it doesn't weigh even maybe a pound or so, and it can't.
Right.
But an airplane that is thousands of pounds can fly. How? You've got gravity pulling that thing down, and gravity never quits. Well, because you have another law of aerodynamics that is totally different from the law of gravity, and with speed and the shape of a wing, it actually lifts it up and supersedes the law of gravity. Gravity didn't cease; it's fully in play.
Yeah, it's working against it. Yeah.
But there's a higher law. Once you step into it, it actually lifts you above. It overpowers gravity. I think that there is a downward drag toward selfishness, pride, greed, lust, malice, anger, envy in all of us. But if I lift my eyes to heaven and I tap in to the law of faith and love, I believe that I can enter into a law of grace that supersedes the downward drag of my heart and can actually lift me to higher places so I don't have to live in the mud.
Right. It is interesting, though, because I think generally speaking, most people know that, right? They know that being kind to people, for example, is going to play a better long-term benefit, or working diligently as opposed to stealing from other people is going to long-term serve you and other people better. Do you think it's just laziness or the inability to delay gratification that a person wouldn't do that?
Well, I love this conversation. I'm honored that you're asking me because, I'm not Jordan Peterson. I'm not like a psychologist who's an expert in this stuff. I'm just spitballing here. I think it's easy for all of us to be lazy rather than to take the hard route. I think. Would you remind me specifically of your question? Is it laziness or what?
Laziness or the inability to delay gratification.
That makes us selfish?
Or, selfish, lazy, malicious, like you said.
Yeah. I think that it's all of the above. There was a little video that I saw from a friend named Brian Godawa who made this video, and it was called Cruel Logic. Cruel Logic. And it was a guy who woke up and found himself in a torture chair, strapped like duct tape to a chair. And there was a doctor there who said, "Professor, I was sitting in your class today and I was listening to everything that you had to say about human nature simply being the result of biological processes, instinct and survival. Mm-hmm. And he said, I want to put your theory to the test. And he starts up like a dentist drill and is about to like drill through his arm, okay? And then pull out like a blowtorch. And he says, give me one reason why I shouldn't kill you right now. And he's like, duh, duh. And he takes the tape off his mouth and he says, you're sick, you're evil, this is horrible, you can't do that. And he said, that's just a moral construct that some people have come up with.
Right.
I'm operating off instinct and survival. And he's like, well, that's not legal. And he's like, well, there's not a prosecutor here. I don't plan on getting caught.
And who determines what is?
Yeah. And he's just like, it's wrong. You know it's wrong. And he's like, now you're appealing to a metaphysical conscience or something to say that I know it's wrong. He's like, I'm operating off of what's going to benefit me the most right now for my survival. And my aggression is actually helping me accomplish that. And you are the weaker member of the species. In fact, we're improving the gene pool right now by me putting this drill through your head. And the guy just, I felt bad for the guy in the chair, and I'm trying to figure out an answer for him to say to this guy.
Right.
And you realize, like, wait a second, it's like, why are we selfish? Why are we all of these things? I don't think we have any good reasons to, other than I think we're bent and broken deep inside of our heart. And that's why I think so many people find that the only way out of that prison is to get on their knees and say, God, help me. Make me the man that you want me to be. And I need a power outside myself to help me do that. I'm not going to do it perfectly, but I want to do it increasingly, step by step, little by little. And again, why this podcast is so important, and why guys making these knives and doing other things are important, is like you're using the gifts and talents in the community that you've been entrusted with to care for other people and to improve yourself for the service of your family and your community. I'm like, right on. I think that's the right road.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I like what you're saying too about this idea of having this objective moral compass versus something that's subjective like culture or laws or...
If I'm in a storm in a boat, I need an objective directional compass.
Right.
Not what the hell I feel is north right now.
Yeah.
Because I could be upside down and backwards and I wouldn't know it. And people are that way. I'm that way at times emotionally when everything just caves in on me.
Right.
I've got to know what is true north. And if I don't have that, I'm lost.
Well, you could even think about some of the most polarizing subjects. Think about slavery. Why was slavery wrong? Well, because it's wrong morally to enslave another person.
Why?
Well, that's my moral compass, because we all have the same worth as people.
I got a different moral compass.
Well, and that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say, now this isn't Kirk Cameron, don't take this out of context and like put it
might get spliced
up
and everything.
And say that Kirk said this. But prior to this objective moral compass that was given to people through, say, the Bible, that says every man is created in the image of God and worth, dignity, and value, and you can't enslave and own another human being. Mm-hmm. They're not yours.
Right.
Okay, before that, prior to that, in the ancient world, slavery was just good business, bro.
It makes common sense.
It's common. It's not immoral. It's not even illegal.
Right.
It's just, how do you think the pyramids got built? How do you think the Great Wall of China got built? Slavery in the United States was wicked and evil and terrible and inexcusable. Always. But do you know, this is when slavery ended. Wilberforce and those in early America ended it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had 600,000 people die over this issue. But prior to that,
completely acceptable.
That's just totally normal.
Right.
And so we've come so far. And that's one of the things that really, like, you know, lights me up when people want to continue to artificially perpetuate and propagate racism today. Mm-hmm. for their own gain because it actually makes them money for racism to continue to exist.
And pitting people against each other,
yeah,
right?
I mean, then you get into Marxism and everything else where you get the classes pitted against each other so that they fight and tear each other down. Then others can move in and take over, like China, like other sorts of societies and organizations. And we just got to be smarter than that. We just got to go like, that's an old playbook move. Not doing there. Not going there.
You even see that with the sexes. That was what you were talking about earlier, how if you were the enemy, what you would do to break down the country. And part of that is pit women against men and men against women.
That's right. And parents and children against parents.
Right.
And replace parents with government.
Yeah.
Boy, if you could do that, you've got it. But I had this great feeling that this current cultural setback is really a divine setup for a moral and spiritual comeback led by the we're going to be busy. We don't need to be bored.
Well, that's the weird thing. When I started this 10 years ago, like a week ago was 10 years. And it's more relevant, unfortunately. It's more relevant and more crucial than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is also exciting. It's really exciting.
It's exciting to me that the groundswell is moving, that there's more and more men engaged in the idea of becoming better men. There's more and more podcasts and events and books and information on men stepping up, learning from each other, growing together and becoming better.
Hey, what's a good, if I were to recommend a book to my young adult sons, what's a book you've read recently?
Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart.
You've read it?
Yeah.
That's so great. And I just had John Eldred on the podcast last week. And that book to me is one of the best, if not the best book on masculinity.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I know so many who have said that it really just changed their life.
You kind of alluded to it. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but when you were talking about, one of my favorite quotes from him is, deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. And you kind of had some undertones with that quote when you were talking about it earlier.
Yeah. I think that is the strategy, that is the story that is deep within every man's heart. And I think that apart from living out that story, I think you're never going to feel like a man. Now, does that mean that everything has to, turn out like it did for Braveheart? Well, actually, we don't want everything to turn out the way it did for Braveheart. It didn't end well for him. But I think that's true, and there's a battle that God's calling you to fight.
Right.
There is a beauty He's calling you to love. There are people for you to help and to rescue, and what's the third one?
Adventure to live.
And the adventure to live.
Yeah.
Whether you're rich or you're poor, or you're living in a jungle, or you're living in a glass and steel jungle in a city, there's an adventure to live. Yeah, man.
That's what it's all about.
I agree.
How do we learn more about the book,
Okay.
Born to be Brave, and then also what's the new show? What's the new program?
So the book is called Born to be Brave, and you can just go get that on Amazon.
Yep.
Anywhere you want, Born to be Brave. And
There's like a workbook I saw that comes with it too, or something.
that was
right?
AI generated by somebody.
Is that what it was?
And I ordered it because I was excited. I was like,
You're like, how is it?
Somebody summarized my book.
It's pretty generic, but
dude, it sucks.
it's like here's the overview, and then here's the
even
10 questions you should ask or something.
And it has nothing to do with what I actually wrote. Like, it's so bad. I was so disappointed. I wasted my $8 on a workbook.
You didn't have the AI generate something better for you now.
No, they just put the AI would have done a great job if they put the right inputs, but they weren't even the right inputs.
Yeah.
And they're just duping people with that stuff.
That's too bad.
But the book has sort of workbook-like questions in it for you to ask, with your tribe. And then the new TV show is called Iggy and Mr. Kirk. It's my offering, together with a company called Brave Books, to bring back a television show for kids that ignites their imagination for the good. It doesn't just entertain them, it actually builds their character by teaching them lessons the way Mr. Rogers did. And it's kind of a combination between Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. except instead of Kermit the Frog, we've got Iggy the iguana.
Okay.
Who's my little 5-year-old iguana I've adopted and I'm raising in my treehouse in the backyard. I'm Mr. Kirk with my wife and my daughter. He's learning lessons every 5-year-old's got to learn with this colorful cast of lovable puppets, including a vulture named Culture. And Culture is always lying to Iggy and deceiving him into believing
that's good.
the wrong things. And he's got to rely on this non-woke supercomputer to tell him the truth and the wisdom from his dad and from his mom to help him know who he is and why he's here. It's a great show. It's called Iggy Mr. Kirk, and Brave Plus is where you can find it. So you go to braveplus.com and you can sign up and get it. We finished 20 episodes on lessons on forgiveness, kindness, telling the truth, teamwork, overcoming your fear, trusting God.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love stuff like that because when I was little, for me, it was the Berenstain Bears.
Yeah,
And it was like my mom would read me the Berenstain Bears, but there's always a lesson about working hard.
Yeah.
Or the one that me and my kids read often is where they all start to get a little chubby because they're eating junk food.
Okay, yeah.
It's like the family starts
Dude,
to
don't start
train
your
for
fat
running.
shaming. You're going to have a whole bunch of...
It is what it is.
Do you remember Davy and Goliath? Remember the claymation, Davy and Goliath?
I
Do
don't
you ever
remember that.
Oh, man.
No.
I used to love that show, and boy, that was so good. With Gumby and Pokey, and
Yep,
and
I
you remember
remember
them,
that,
and there's
of
so
course.
many other shows. But Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a classic. And anyway, Brave Plus has got all kinds of shows, about 50 of them, including mine, Iggy and Mr. Kirk, and it's a beautiful show. I hope parents go see it.
Are you part of Brave Plus? Is that your organization or?
It's that is owned by Brave Books.
Okay. Oh, right.
And
Okay.
Brave Books creates books for kids.
I knew that.
And they're awesome too. So go to Brave Plus, go to Brave Books, and you can check all that stuff out. They actually also happen to publish my book called Born to be Brave.
Got it. Yeah. Very cool.
I'm into the brave
I can see it. I can hear it.
motif.
The motif.
now.
It's
And
needed
you know what?
though.
And you're just putting gasoline on the fire.
Man, that's what I do
with this Montana
Let me
knife
give
company.
you knives and weapons and tools. And like,
I was on Chad Robichaux's
Oh, yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
and he gave me a gun.
oh, he did.
Yeah, he gave me
All right,
he gave me a
fine. I'll
Smith
give
&
you a
Wesson.
gun. This
No,
this
bro.
doesn't hold a candle.
You
to
know
that.
what? I don't have my gun on me, but I got my knife on me, and so this is actually going to be my.
This will be a great
my
hunting
tool
knife
every day.
because you guys are into hunting now. Man, that'll be a great knife for you.
Thank you. I love it.
Yeah, you bet. Well, thank you for coming out and spending some time with me. I really appreciate
It's
it.
an honor to be here and to be talking about these things with you.
Yeah, I think we have similar missions, maybe coming at it from some different angles, but we need all the angles. So I'm glad.
Let's go.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you.